All right, we're settling this right now. I see this exact fight playing out in the comments of literally every car audio explainer on the internet. JBL Club going head-to-head against Rockford Fosgate Punch.
These are two subwoofer families that have been trading blows over trunk space for decades. But here's the take you probably didn't see coming. In 2026, most of you out there should absolutely not buy the sub with the bigger watt number. Honestly, you shouldn't even buy the one from the louder brand. And to add to that, there's one specific number printed on every single JBL Club box that makes it look like an absolute monster. I'm going to show you what that number actually means, and trust me, it cuts both ways. Oh, and stick around to the end. We're breaking down the one massive wiring mistake that kills way more of these subs than a blown amp ever will. Let me give you a perfect example. Story time. My buddy Jake, about 3 years ago, buys himself a 12-inch sub for 99 bucks. The box boldly says 2400 watts. He is completely hyped. No amplifier at all. He runs it straight off his head unit, and of course, pins the bass boost all the way to max. Week 1, it's this muddy whisper. By week 3, the voice coil is completely dead. Now he's back riding around on factory speakers, telling anyone who'll listen that car audio is a complete scam. Yeah, see, meanwhile, I had a guy walk into my shop asking for the absolute loudest sub he could get for under $200. I hand him a Rockford Punch P2 and a 1 cubic foot sealed box running on just a 400 watt amp. 7 days later, he comes marching back in, demanding to know what kind of magic sub that was, because his buddy's massive 2,000 watt setup literally couldn't keep up with it. It's the exact same lesson, just from two completely different directions. That massive number on the box, it's just a billboard. The entire system is your actual reality.
Right, so no more billboards today. We're talking real prices, real specs, real box sizes, and a verdict you can actually take to the bank. We're starting with the money map, because that's exactly where people always get lost first. Let's look at JBL Club. You've got 10 and 12-inch subs, and two totally different generations are still sitting on shelves right now. You've got the older Club 1044 and 1224 pushing 250 and 275 watts RMS. Those usually show up anywhere between about 90 bucks and 170. Then you have the newer Club 102 and 122, hitting 350 and 400 watts RMS. The Club 122 is $136 at Crutchfield as we record this, and there's also a shallow 122 SL pushing 400 watts, running about 228 at list. Both of these families carry a standard 1-year warranty, so that part's a complete wash. Now over on the Punch side, you're looking at 3 distinct tiers. The P1 is your entry point, doing 250 watts RMS. The 12-inch lists at 130, though I've personally seen it under 100 at the right store. Step up to the P2, that's the middle child, pulling 400 watts RMS, 200 list, but you'll usually spot it for 140 to 160 in the wild. Then the P3 is the top of the family. 500 watts for the 10-inch, 600 for the 12, ranging from about 185 up to 260. Plus, they've got the shallow P3S pushing 400 watts.
Okay, here's the pattern interrupt, and I am giving it to you inside the first 5 minutes. Look at the JBL Club 122. It's 400 watts RMS, and it costs about $136. Now look at the Rockford P2, also 400 watts RMS, but it costs $200. It's the exact same power rating, but they are $64 apart. So the real question driving this entire explainer is simply this: what does that extra $64 actually buy you?
Oh, I can already see Marcus getting warmed up over there. Go ahead, man, tell us, what does it buy?
It buys you a rating you can actually trust. Rockford rates their entire punch line under CEA 2031. That is a real, rigorous industry test standard for power handling and thermal limits. When Rockford tells you it handles 400 watts RMS, there is a documented procedure backing that number up. JBL does not certify the Club line under that specific standard. Now, I'm not saying JBL's numbers are fake, but I am saying only one of these brands actually lets you verify them.
Okay, sure, but let's talk about the number you teased at the very top, the one plastered on the JBL box. And honestly, it's a beauty. The old Club 1224 is rated at 93 decibels sensitivity. The Punch P1 is only 86. Now, since every 3 decibels equals double the power, on paper, that JBL looks like it needs a fifth of the amps to hit the exact same volume. 5 times less power. That is the famous efficient JBL story. And hey, it's real. But you gotta read the fine print. It's 93 dB at 2.83 volts. 2.83 volts into 4 ohms is actually 2 watts. So at a standard 1 watt, it's really about 90 decibels. Don't get me wrong, it's still the most efficient sub in this entire conversation by a mile. It's just not the magical 7 decibel monster the sticker implies. And here is the twist hiding inside that twist. The new Club 122, JBL actually dropped the sensitivity down to 86 decibels at 2.83 volts. They actively traded away that crazy efficiency to get more power handling and a shallower frame. So that whole efficient JBL story, It really only applies to the old generation, assuming you can even still find one.
And honestly, it gets even worse for the new JBL. The Club 122 has just 6mm of excursion. Compare that to the Punch P2, which rocks 13.3mm. Excursion is literally how far the cone can travel before it hits its mechanical limits. It's the spec that dictates how hard a sub can hit before it completely bottoms out. JBL is asking a shorter stroke sub to move 400 watts. Physics just doesn't do discounts, guys.
Which absolutely matters if you're chasing raw output. But here's the part the spec sheet can't show you, and that's how these things actually sound. Let's look at the JBL Club. Polypropylene cone, nitrile rubber surround, 2-inch copper voice coil. The result is tight, clean, highly controlled. I'd honestly call it studio bass. It plays precise notes. It doesn't just make a bunch of noise.
Right, and what about the punch? You're getting a Kevlar reinforced paper cone on the P1 and P2, and anodized aluminum on the P3. You've got a Santoprene surround and massive 2¼ to 2½ inch 4-layer voice coils. The sound is quite literally exactly what the name implies. Punch. It gives you that aggressive, forward mid-bass thump you feel right in your chest on a heavy hip-hop kick. It's aggressive, and it's incredibly fun.
And it's not just the attitude of the sub, it's the tuning. The P2's free air resonance sits at 27 Hz. The Club 122 is up at 32. When your track drops way down below 30 Hz, that Rockford is still moving real air, while the JBL's is essentially running out of stroke. If you're into EDM, trap, or anything with serious sub-bass, that is a difference you will hear in the first 10 seconds. And ironically, the cheap P1, it's actually tuned the lowest of anything we're covering in this explainer at 25 Hz. It just doesn't quite have the power handling to use that deep tuning as hard. But look, if you're listening to rock, jazz, or acoustic tracks, you actually want the JBL's crisp note definition. You don't necessarily need that 40 Hz chest slam. And that's not a knock on the Punch series at all. It's just about matching the right tool to your specific music.
Fine, fair point. But now we have to talk about wiring, because this is the one area where JBL genuinely wins, and let me tell you, it hurts me to admit it. The Club series features SSI, which stands for Selectable Smart Impedance. It's just a little switch sitting right there on the terminal block. You flip it to 2 ohms or 4 ohms and you're completely done. A total beginner literally cannot get this wrong.
Right, compare that to the P2 and P3, which are dual voice coil setups. If you wire them in parallel, you get 2 ohms. If you wire them in series, you jump to 8. If you get that backwards, your amp is either going to starve for power or it'll run incredibly hot and start clipping. And then the P1 is a single voice coil, meaning you have to pick 2 or 4 ohms right at checkout and you are permanently locked in.
I will take a proper DVC setup any day of the week because that is how you squeeze every last drop of watt out of an amp. But for someone doing their very first install, that JBL switch is objectively easier. There, I said it.
Wow, somebody mark the calendar for that one. And while we're dishing out praise for JBL, the new Club 122 is just 5.5 inches deep, and it's actually rated for free air use. That means it can play with absolutely no enclosure at all, just mounted right on a rear deck or behind a seat.
Yeah, try doing that with a Punch.
The shallow P3S does get you down to 3.65 inches for those really tight truck builds, but the standard P2 needs 6.4 inches of clearance. If your trunk is shallow, that measurement alone is going to make the decision for you. Also, if you're working with a coupe, both of these families offer 10s. The Club 1024 is 5 5/8 inches deep, while the Punch P3 10-inch handles a massive 500 watts RMS. That is exactly how you get serious heavy output inside a tiny car. Okay, here is where things get really interesting. This is a twist I almost missed completely while researching this explainer. The JBL Club you can go buy today is absolutely not the same sub that originally made the series famous. Look at the old 1224, 275 watts RMS, 93 decibels, 10.25 millimeters of excursion, and its happiest sitting in a 2.5 cubic foot ported box. Now look at the new 1220, 400 watts, just 86 decibels, and only 6 millimeters of excursion. It's the exact same family name, but it's a completely different animal. I'd bet half the reviews out there praising the efficient JBL Club are actually talking about the old one.
Exactly. So you're really picking between 3 totally different philosophies here. You've got the old JBL, which is your efficiency king, built specifically for smaller amps. The new JBL, offering an easier install, more power, a shallower frame, and needing a smaller box. And then the Punch lineup, giving you maximum excursion, deeper tuning, verified ratings, and a power ceiling that pushes all the way up to 600 watts.
And please never forget this, the box is literally half the sub. The old 1224 wants 2.5 cubic feet ported, that is basically a mini fridge just living in your trunk. The new Club 12.2 is much happier, right around 1.8 cubes ported. Over on the Rockford side, the P2 wants about 1 cubic foot sealed, or 1.8 ported.
Listen, if you drop any of these subwoofers into a cheap half-cubic-foot prefab box, they will all sound like a wet cardboard box. I really don't care which logo is stamped on the magnet.
Which naturally brings us to a crucial section of this explainer, the 5 common installation mistakes. This is all the stuff we seriously wish we knew starting out, including that fatal wiring mistake I promised to show you at the top.
Let's hit mistake number 1, buying based on peak watts. Guys, 400 RMS does not just scale up to 1200. It's exactly 400 watts, continuously. That continuous RMS is the single number your amp actually has to match.
Mistake number 2, and honestly, this is the big one. It's the wiring. For DVC owners, if you get the series versus parallel hookup wrong, your amp sees the completely wrong electrical load. A 4-ohm amp running on a 2-ohm load is going to run incredibly hot and start clipping. On the flip side, an 8-ohm load will completely starve it. And for you JBL owners, if you flip that SSI switch while the amp is actually on, flipping it live can straight out fry the amp's output stage. A wrong connection, paired with a heavy hand on the gain knob, kills vastly more of these subs than anything else. That is the ultimate mistake.
Mistake number 3, setting your gain purely by ear while keeping your bass boost maxed out. That is exactly how Jake managed to kill his $99 sub in just 3 weeks. Please use a test tone and a multimeter. Or at the absolute minimum, set the gain clean by ear and just leave that bass boost at 0. Any of the subs we talked about today will easily run for years if you do that.
Mistake 4 is the power mismatch. Putting a 600-watt P3 on a tiny 200-watt amp is just money completely wasted. Conversely, throwing a 275-watt old JBL on a massive 500-watt amp, that's going to be a literal smoke show the very first time you crank the volume. Always match the RMS and leave any extra headroom in the amplifier, never in the sub.
And finally, mistake 5 is the box itself. Ported gives you loud, sealed gets you tight. If you honestly don't know which one you prefer, just go sealed. It's way more forgiving if your box isn't perfect, and honestly, every single sub in both of these families is super sealed friendly.
All right, we made it to verdict time. My personal pick is the Punch, specifically the P2, or the P3 if you've actually got the amp power to back it up. You get 13 millimeters of excursion, that deep 27 Hz tuning, CEA 2031 verified ratings, and a very real upgrade path. You don't just buy a sub for the amp you own today, you buy it for the entire system you're building. And the Club family completely tops out at 400 watts, while the Punch answers strong at 600.
And I respect that, but my pick is the JBL Club 122. It's $136, gives you 400 watts RMS, a really nice 5.5-inch depth, that foolproof SSI switch, and it's free air capable. For the budget builder, the everyday driver who just wants real bass without needing a literal degree in car audio, it is the absolute lowest risk 400 watts on the market. And remember that 93 dB number from the top of the explainer? If you are running on a small amp with a stock head unit and you manage to track down an old 124, that is the sleeper pick of the year. On just 300 watts, it completely outlouds subs that cost twice as much.
So there it is. We clearly disagree, and honestly, we're supposed to, because the right answer was never just a blanket JBL or Rockford. It's about which one actually matches your specific amp, your exact box, and the music you actually listen to. Match the RMS, not the peak. Seriously, that is the entire explainer summed up in one single line.
Exactly. And whichever family you inevitably land in, figure out the box first, dial in the gain second, and for the love of audio, leave the bass boost alone. That is how you ultimately win this fight, no matter whose name happens to be stamped on the cover.